Thanks very much, and it's a great pleasure talking to everyone in real life and not talking about COVID. So that's fantastic. And we're going to be talking about the future of personalised nutrition. And I think this is something that really concerns everybody. And I think what I want to say is where we all started, because why bother with this? Why have another look? You know, haven't we got enough things to worry about? Don't we know most of this already? And when I went to the internet and tried to look at this about 10 years ago, as from personal experience, I found that unanimously these were the things you found on all the official websites, that calories are the most important thing. You can all lose weight if you count calories properly. It's just a failure if you can't do it properly, and that's why people get fat. All calories are equal. You must avoid high-fat foods at all costs because they are calorie dense. And the UK guidelines, Public Health England, also USDA say have more starchy foods. They're generally good for you. We should having less fatty meals and more rice, pasta, potatoes, and bread. And never skip meals, because I was brought up in the idea at medical school that grazing was much better than gorging. We should be eating like cows, not like lions. And this concept of eating little and often. And also exercise was the key to losing weight. And that this is also promoted heavily by all the drinks companies like Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, and that's why they sponsor all these sporting events, to get everyone to say there's a link between if you can exercise, then of course you can relax with a sugary or junk food beverage. And also the other thing that I think we were all taught is that if you follow these clear guidelines, you do well. Everyone will do well. There is one size that fits all, and that's why half people in the audience here will be told 2,000 calories is your limit. Everyone else, 2,500 calories. Very simple, really, and that's why these rules have been around for so long, and that's why we've all got fatter and fatter every year. Now, I think we're at a pivot point in nutrition after decades of this sort of fundamentalist religion into calories and fats being evil, that things are changing. And I'm seeing this at food conferences, nutrition conferences, and we asked 13 professors of nutrition in the US and the UK to rank 105 foods, common foods, from a sort of 0 to 10 score about how healthy or unhealthy they were. And we've been led to believe they should all agree, and they should have been like the top line, because these is what the people who make the guidelines say. This is all based on what the experts believe. The reality is below, when you can see that, yes, there were some agreements. Eating biscuits and Kentucky Fried Chicken and big bowls of sticky rice are generally bad for you, and good things, eating berries and olive oil. But in that middle bit, no agreement at all between these 13 wise experts. No agreement on dried fruits, for example, no agreement on dairy, no agreement on low-fat dairy, no agreement on things like cheese, no agreement on fruit juices, and no real agreement on artificially sweetened beverages. So, why are we in this mess? Well, it's because we have been dealing with nutrition as the simplest, dumbest science, and not given it any funding at all. And it turns out it is probably the most complicated science of all of them. And we're just discovering that rather than just having these 4 types of food, ways to categorize food at least, so it's calories or it's fats, it's proteins, it's sugar, there are over 30,000 different chemicals in the common foods we eat. You combine that with all the tens of thousands of chemical interactions in our body, and you combine that with the trillions of microbes in our body that are themselves producing, they're acting as chemical factories, and they are producing tens of thousands of other molecules that interact with our body. You can see that this is far from being a very simple science that has these very simple rules. So I think we have to totally change our mind. And I think the thing that's really, it's first changed my mind, but I think it has changed the field, is the discovery really of the microbiome. Because this is like discovering a whole new organ in our bodies that we thought previously was just harmful, and we now know is actually key to our health. So 100 trillion bacteria, archaea, there's even more viruses there that are feeding off them, and plus they're fungi, they're parasites. And as I said, they're like a giant pharmacy within us, producing vitamins and chemicals for our body, interacting with all the chemicals, maybe explaining why some women get no benefit from anti-inflammatory drugs or painkillers. It's been shown that people who take paracetamol, acetaminophen, many people don't get any benefit from that. That's down to your gut microbes. And I think this is what we really need to understand, is this enormous role of these players. So given these two scenarios, the discovery of the gut microbiome, the discovery we got so much wrong in nutrition, was where I was giving a talk at an event like this in end of 2017, when two guys came up to me, George and Jonathan, entrepreneurs in the internet world, who'd been making money selling those ghastly adverts that follow you around on the internet when you bought a pair of shoes or you looked at them, you seem to get them for the rest of your life. You can blame those two, but they wanted to do something else. And they said, we want to combine microbiome with this idea of personalization. And it all came together at exactly the right time. And I said, only doing this if it's science-based and get some serious money. And I never thought I'd never see them again, but they did come back with 2 weeks later and said, yes, we've got money for real science, not just marketing. And the timing, of course, in all these companies is crucial. Many people have the right idea at the wrong time, but suddenly we had the ability to with these clouds, to do big data, to do big AI, data crunching that had come in many other fields. We had the invention of the continuous glucose monitor, which I think is an absolutely revolutionary tool, which everyone in the future is probably going to have within 10 years, that allows you to get a readout of your blood sugar every 5 minutes for 2 weeks in a painless way. And on your phone, you've got finger prick testing, which can test now for hundreds of different chemicals that you can do at home, so you don't need to go to hospital. You've got phone apps that allow you to log all your food, take photographs, and measure in real time how you're feeling, your energy levels, your appetite, your mood, etc. And of course, the genetic revolution that the byproduct was, we could do this on all organisms, and so using genetics, we could actually get a really detailed look at your gut microbes by what's called metagenomic shotgun sequencing, looking at every gene in every microbe in your gut, and this is giving us incredible information. So all this is coming together just at the right time, and this allowed us to go on and do these experiments. And being a startup company, this happened 10 times faster than it would happen in academia. So we finished this whole study, the largest ever intervention study of food in 9 months. We had 1,000 people, mostly twins, and gave them all identical meals. So identical muffins, identical milkshakes, and a whole range of other tests at St. Thomas's Hospital and at Mass General. And many things we could discuss, this is all published now, but the big thing we noticed was that giving everyone identical meals, who were normal people, they weren't diabetic or anything, there was a 10-fold difference in the response of the glucose and insulin, and 10-fold difference in the response in the fat levels and inflammation levels after a meal. So the idea that we can all be compressed into one set of advice when all of us respond differently to something, even if it has exactly the same calories, makes a nonsense of everything we've learned before, but also gives us an opportunity to then predict how that might occur. You needed that big variation to then actually go on. And this is the big difference between things like genetic effects, because you never get this huge range. Now, the other big insight was that as a geneticist I've been studying twins for 30 years, was that identical twins had different responses to food. The genetic component of this was really small, and it was non-existent in how we process fats, for example. So we had some twins where one would get a good response to carbs and the other one a bad response, and vice versa. So that was the second big insight that I wasn't expecting. I thought we'd be putting genes into our model, and it turns out they're pretty useless. So people who've been banking on genes for predicting foods in the past really have gone wrong, because you can't get any better than identical twins in terms of a genetic test. If you had a genetic clone sitting next to you, it would be a pretty nice way to go through life if they did everything first. You'd find out, like having your own canary. The other thing we found a bit by chance, and this is actually by having people on the team at Zoe who weren't traditional medical scientists, many come from physics, astrophysics, etc. They just said, well, let's look 3 hours after a meal at what happens to the glucose. Diabetes doctors never do. Oh, no point looking after 2 hours, it's irrelevant. But it turned out that at 3 hours after, 1 in 4 people got a significant dip in their blood sugar. And it turned out this was actually quite important. And it was associated with less energy, greater hunger, and over the course of 24 hours, people who had this dip ended up eating about 200 more calories, about 10% more during that day. So just think, you're eating the same thing, one person gets a dip, the other one doesn't, that's going to make you actually gain weight. If only you could find out and know whether you're a dipper or not, wouldn't that be important? And also, that's a perfect experiment to show why calories are all equal is complete nonsense. Because both eating the same muffin, the effect of its effect on your body has a huge effect on your hunger and your weight. So next time you are at about 10:30, 11 o'clock and feeling, am I feeling a bit hungrier and more tired than usual? Maybe I had a sugar dip, maybe I should change my breakfast. And that's, I think, a really interesting way to start thinking about things in a much more individual way than we've ever done before. I used to think people were mad. I thought it was, when I saw patients, I said, oh, I feel terribly faint at 10:30 in the morning. I just thought, hysterical, you know. I'm addicted to McVitie's. They're the only thing that keep me going. Just had more sugar. But I think there is now a physiological reason for it. So I was completely wrong. And of course, what we want to do is to try and link what's going on in your gut microbes to advice to try and improve those gut microbes. And we know there's lots of things wrong with our gut microbes now. We've lost about half of our gut microbes compared to African tribes and most undeveloped countries. 50%, that's quite a lot. And some key microbes have gone, which we'll discuss later. But we did the first study linking in 1,000 people the foods that they ate, the microbes, and then health associations with it, because all the things we were getting on these individuals. And this way we could work out which microbes were associated and therefore start to give advice. And it turns out that we were able to identify a whole series of healthy and unhealthy bugs. We call them good and bad. It's a bit of a, obviously, oversimplification. But we did find that we found certain bugs that were associated with healthy foods, and those ones were associated with healthy health outcomes as well. So we finally first got the link that we were looking for between these bugs and also the unhealthy ones. And interestingly, it wasn't just meat or vegetables, it was also associated with ultra-processed foods, which we know are very bad for us, and yet are completely ignored in all government guidelines, where they're just talking about fats, sugars, and calories. So this is where the Zoe program came about. So very quickly, we went from this innovative study published in Nature Medicine to a product, and rolled this out 18 months ago in the US. And it's essentially a home kit of what we were doing in the PREDICT study. So you get your blood glucose measured, you do this yourself, you do a finger prick, and you get your stool sample. Then you get your results. And the idea is you get your results back as scores, so every food you eat is then given a score from 0 to 100, and you're taught by digital nutritionists how to start making meals based on your own score. So keeping as many things, options as possible, the greatest diversity of foods we're also looking for. Nothing's excluded, and calories are never mentioned. These are my results, if you want to know. I had terrible blood sugar control, terrible fat control. I was only really saved by my gut microbes, which did really well. And you can see here an example of some of the scores I got that meant that if I'm eating grains, or I could start making healthy swaps. So I could change my bread. I could say I'll have buckwheat instead of rice, or all these things, that I actually had something quantifiable to go for, and you can quickly scan things in the supermarket. I also had a parasite in me. It turned out that this is something that 5 years ago you'd have had eliminated with antibiotics. Now we know this parasite, blastocystis, is actually good for you. It's munching away at all the fats inside my body and reducing the fat inside my body. It occurs in about 25% of the British population. It's greater in males than females, but only 5% of Americans, and only 2% of American females. And it's in every undeveloped country, it's guts. So we all had it, we've lost it. And so this is only coming because of this high definition sequencing. And we need to find out how we can get these parasites back in us if they are so good. And you get gut booster advice. And I think the other interesting thing is we're moving towards an idea that foods will not be scored as they are currently by calories and fats and sugars, but will have your own personalized score for them, which will completely change how you rank your foods. This is just some of the fermented foods that I've been scored for. And you can see it's not ranked on fats or saturated fats. It's completely different scoring based on how good it is for your gut microbes and your general health. The outcomes generally, so far, they've been very good. 9 pounds weight loss of people who follow the program going forward. Unusually weren't expecting energy as a big product. By cutting out these sugar peaks, these fat peaks, we're getting much more energy levels. And we're doing a randomized controlled trial to confirm this. And in the US, we've now got up to nearly 30,000 people who've done the study. We've just started rolling this out in the UK in a pre-launch, looking at many people on the wait list. Our wait list is going up very fast. There's clearly demand for this. We're up to 200,000 people now waiting for the product, and that's why we're busy hiring more staff. So if anyone wants a job in the computer or data science, do let us know, because we're having to scale up very fast. Haven't got time to talk about COVID here, other than to say that I think the most important thing we learned about COVID was when we studied 1 million people on the Zoe COVID app, and they told us that those with a poor diet quality had much more severe COVID and longer duration symptoms. And this is all about ultra-processed food, junk food, that never gets a proper hearing from the government. And it's the #1 health problem I think we're facing. So to finish up, we're all unique. I hope you now believe that most of the food facts you read about in official guidelines are wrong. I think we should ban the calorie. We should change food labels. And all of us can improve our gut microbes even if we are still waiting for personalization. And that means by getting your 30 plants a week, by having irregular fermented foods, picking high polyphenol foods, and avoiding ultra-processed foods as much as you can, as well as snacking artificial sweeteners. I think we can all be citizen scientists and hopefully all embrace personalised nutrition. Thank you.